Hello and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights, and we're back. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Daniel Bellamy. How are you today?
I'm great. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
How's your 2023 been so far?
So far, it has been pretty great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's the highlight so far? We're 11 days in.
It's been... We've had... How can I describe it? Like, turning over the year, we were pretty rock and roll. First, second, and third in here was pretty hype.
Yep.
As they say.
Yep.
And then it really died down. I think everybody was hungover for about 4 days. And then since then, we've gone back to people are here in 2023 to party, it seems.
Dry January.
That's my take.
Dry January. What's that? Never heard of it.
I feel like people are rolling it back. They might be... I have a friend who does dry February specifically because it's the shortest month. And he feels like he can't manage 31 days. 28, fine.
Welcome to wet January.
Yeah.
That's what all the people
Extra
of Tachikawa... people in Tachikawa are getting wet and staying wet.
We should have T-shirts made. Yeah.
Some wet T-shirts.
Yeah.
We should have a wet T-shirt contest in here. Is that what you're saying?
Nobody has ever done this before, right? This is something I just came up with now.
Excellent ideas. It's going to be great on the podcast as well. That's really going to translate to the audio medium.
You might have been able to tell. I've stored up all kinds of grade A material.
We have been off for a couple of weeks because, it was busy over New Year, as you say. Lots of things going on. And also I caught coronavirus. But, lots of things going on over the last 2 weeks. All kinds of things. But we're back now. And it is 2023. I wonder if you've decided to turn over a new leaf and to prepare some material for this podcast.
No, that's not. That hasn't happened. Sorry. I may have led you astray a little bit saying that I had something that I wanted to tell you. It's not material at all. Okay. I'm really hoping that once I tell you this, that you will kind of go somewhere with it.
I'll have some material.
We can talk about it, yeah. If... as I understand it from you, there are 2 books that you recommend. If people are like, oh, recommend me a book, there's 2 books you recommend, right? One of them is Murderbot Diaries. What's the other one? Aside from, or the Patrick O'Brien stuff as well.
Yeah, that was going to be the other one.
Let's say 3. There's one more.
The Player of Games by Ian M. Banks.
Okay, not that then. Sometimes you just made that up. I've never heard that come out of your mouth before.
All of the Culture series by Ian M. Banks are extremely good.
You're ruining it.
So there's another book that I'm supposed to recommend to people. It's not the Patrick O'Brien books, Master and Commander.
Yeah.
It's not Murderbot Diaries.
I've read those.
I don't know. What is the other book that I recommend to people?
Man. Gideon the Ninth.
Okay.
You've recommended Gideon the Ninth to me for literally, I don't know, years. I don't know how many years, but at least...
a year.
More than that.
I think if you go back and listen to our recommendations of the year from last year on this podcast, that was one of the books that I chose. So
you read it just last year?
Yeah.
Man, you know what? Maybe you're really naggy. It feels like longer than a year.
I am very naggy.
It feels like, honestly, a lifetime. Anyway, I just came on to say I've started reading it. And by started, I mean I'm halfway through it.
What do you think so far?
It's great. I really like it. I'm really digging it. They don't hold your hand. I'll say that.
Right.
Your head is really spinning for, I don't know, the first 80 pages or so, just trying to pick up what the world is.
About the whole book to figure out what was going on.
Right. Also, I read on an e-reader now because it's easier to carry a whole lot of books, which I may or may not have legally purchased. But one of the drawbacks to that is when books have something in the beginning. For example, Gideon the Ninth has a cast of characters kind of thing in the beginning.
Right.
And I need it, but maybe there's a way to do it on my e-reader, but I can't just I don't know how to just flip back to that and then flip back to where I was in the book. Where if it's pages, you just stick your finger in it, right? Riffle back to the beginning and have a look at that bit and go, oh, right, that's that dude and this girl and whatever. But I can't do that. That's a bit of a struggle for me while reading this.
Right. So is this the tech support segment? Is that what's going on here? You want me to fix your e-reader issues?
Basically, yeah. I would like to know. The whole point of this is it's It's a Kobo H2O Glow first edition.
Let me just write that down.
You want to look this up while we're on the podcast, that would be great. I'm not going to fill the airspace. I'm just going to sit here.
Here's what I suggest. Take a photo of that page with your phone. And then it's available to you. You can look at it anytime.
Okay. All right. I have thought about I figure that's somewhere on the internet, right? I have thought about just looking that up.
Yes.
Getting the ninth cast of characters.
But you might run into spoilers that way, so I would avoid doing that.
Right on. It's an interesting book, right? It's a sci-fi thing. It's set in the future. There's space travel, right? But they're all using swords. At one point, she is kind of shocked to see like a carbine blowback rifle that she had only seen in books before. And at some point, like halfway through the book, you're like, it's just a straight up like Agatha Christie murder mystery,
right?
Which is pretty neat.
Is it set in the future, or is it set in just a completely different universe from ours?
Sure, I guess I take space travel as shorthand for it's the future, but yeah, it could just be a different world that is, like, in our terms, future-esque.
So this is one of the books that apparently I recommend to everybody.
Literally
whenever
all the time.
I meet them for the first
You can't shut
time.
up about it.
What would be the 2 or 3 books that you would recommend to anybody when you meet them for the first time?
That's tough. You really put me on the spot. I've read Ender's Game a lot.
All right. Orson Scott Card.
Yeah. Real bummer that he turned out to be a really gross human being. I really enjoyed that book. It was for a long time a comfort read for me.
Right.
I don't think I've read. I may not have read any other book more than twice. And in general, if I read a book twice, it's by accident. Like I forget I've read it, and I read it again. I go, I think I've read this halfway through. But I've read Ender's Game more than 15 times, I reckon.
It helps that it's quite a short book.
It's a pretty easy read as well, right? Like it's not chewy prose or anything, but it's a pretty great story. But tempered a little. Much as my enjoyment for Harmar Superstar is by the fact that like they seem like pretty bad people. Yeah,
he's pretty awful. I do think it's funny in Ender's Game how the brother and sister, I forget their names, basically go on whatever the Ender's Game version of Reddit is.
Right.
And keep making such good posts that eventually the world president gets in touch to say, I think you guys should be running stuff.
Well, it's kind of a populist thing, right? Everyone's like, you know what? These guys, like, they know what's up.
These Reddit posts are so well informed.
Well, they're bred to be super geniuses, right? Yeah. Like it's a bit of a genetic kind of manipulation thing going on.
So this is your recommendation then? It's a book about child soldiers and genetic super geniuses.
Yeah.
Great.
Read that.
Recommend that to everyone you meet. One other thing I wanted to check in on because I missed it, unfortunately, but we had a bit of a Twitter get-together here in the bar, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Just before New Year. Mm-hmm. Who all was in attendance?
Mr. Bean, Casey from the Bean Pod, was here. And you know what, to be honest, it was a bunch of other Twitter personalities that we know from Twitter. But it got pretty busy in here, not just with their crew, but other people. And I was... slanging beers. I had a quick beer with Casey when he came in. I showed them the brewery in the back. And after that, then I was pretty much spinning the wheels of steel. You
were on the taps. Derek Westman popped by as well, didn't he?
Derek popped by, yep. Formerly of Twitter fame. He's recused himself from the Twitterverse.
We're getting dangerously close to our 100th episode. So do you think we should have some kind of 100th episode spectacular where we invite in all of our Twitter buddies to take part in some kind of, grand opera, space opera of a podcast episode?
On the one hand, it seems like a lot of work. But on the other hand, it sounds like something that you will do.
Right.
So, yes, let's do that.
Look forward to that 100th episode coming up soon where we'll of the Sakamichi Book Club, we can all exchange our book recommendations.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to say that. Let's cut that.
Final piece of any other business before we get to the good stuff that you've been waiting for. We were planning to do this at the end of the year last year, and we would have done if I hadn't been invalided out. But why don't we look back briefly at the year that was 2022 to not to do any kind of ranking, but to just briefly call out what some of our beers of the year were. So you can choose anything you like, but what did you particularly enjoy drinking in 2022? I can start, if that helps. The first one is from a brewery that is not new, but was new to us last year. We ordered beer from them for the first time, and that is Hino Brewing. We ordered quite a lot of beer from them in the end because it was all really, really good. But this is a beer that we drank on the podcast, and apparently it was the first ever hazy IPA that they made. The Yuzu Hazy IPA from Hino Brewing really stands out to me. I love Yuzu anyway in beers, and hazy IPA is pretty delicious. So bringing those two together, that was a top-notch beer.
Right.
But then almost everything that we had from Hino was really good, wasn't it?
Yeah. Interestingly, that was a session hazy, if you recall. It was 4.5%, and it still had just a load of character to it.
Confounding beer all round.
Yeah.
What else stands out to you from the last year?
I think one of the big ones that I had, and I haven't seen it before and I haven't seen it since, but it was called Hop Oracle from West Coast Brewing.
Right.
That was a hazy double IPA, I think, and that was just fantastic. Really kind of blew me away. I think we got it in a mixed case, which means we had maybe 12 or 8 of them, and in circumstances like that, especially when we have 8, I always feel a little guilty taking one because...
You don't feel that guilty.
Though. I don't feel that guilty. I'm still going to do it, but I definitely cannot convince myself to take more than one when there's that few. But I definitely wanted to take another one of the Hop Oracle.
So West Coast Brewing, I know you're listening. Please make more of the Hop Oracle.
Yeah.
Dad really likes it.
Yeah, man, that was good.
There's another brewery I want to call out, and this is probably going to be no stranger to anybody who likes craft beer in Japan, and that is Uchu, probably one of Japan's most popular breweries. But what they're known for mostly is very hoppy beers. They do lots of really hazy stuff.
Yeah.
Beer I want to call out from them is not a hoppy beer. It's not even IPA. It was their Saturn Imperial Dessert Stout that got released just before Christmas, I think. Took a can of that home and very much enjoyed it over the 2.5 hours it took for me to work my way through those 300 milliliters. Big beer, lots of really huge flavors, but also very, very delicious, very rich and very full-bodied. It was a good one. Did you have a can of that?
I did have a can of that. Yeah, it was excellent, and that was a beer that I took it out. I didn't let it cool down that much before I cracked it open, and the changes that went on from when I started drinking it, and it was probably a couple degrees colder than it should have been, to when I got to the end were pronounced. It was really interesting how much that beer changed over time.
Yeah, that was a really, really interesting point of that. And I think similarly to you, I had mine in my fridge, so it was a bit too cold. So that might have been why it took me so long to drink it. But it was a real journey, wasn't it, that one? One other brewery which was new to us this year, Be Easy in Aomori. They've been around for quite some time, but we ordered some beer from them for the first time this year. And it has also all been extremely good. Hard to pick a favorite, but the Tohoku 6 hop, I think we've had a couple of times in here on draft. And not only has that beer been really delicious, it's also incredibly popular. Yeah. So when one of those goes on tap, you have about 24 hours to get a glass of it before it's all gone. So just as a publican, I'm very much in favor of that. But as a beer drinker, I very much enjoyed their beer this year.
Very recently, we had a couple of our regulars in, and these are people who drink a fair amount of beer and actively seek out different beers. And they're drinking at our place, but they're also going other places and drinking at different bars and picking up cans. And they agreed that the two of them both said that Hegoma from Be Easy, which was a rye hazy IPA that Hegoma did, they both said that Hegoma was one of their favorites of the year. So a lot of praise for Be Easy, and wondering why this year was the first year we had them in.
That's quite an accolade, isn't it?
Yeah.
The final brewery I wanted to call out, also a new one for us this year, and that's Open Air, which Ben from Noncraft moved to Kobe to work at. We've had quite a few really good beers from them. I particularly enjoyed the Abduction which was a West Coast Pilsner.
Sure.
Don't get a lot of really hoppy Pilsners, but it's a style that I quite like. But everything we've had from them has been really good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to more great beers from them this year.
One last one from me, and this actually tramples all over what I just said.
Okay.
We got 8 cans of... No, I think we got 9 cans of this. 2 of them went home with me. It was...
So we got 7 cans of
it. We got the customers of Sakamichi
we got 3 cans
of it. I was pretty keen for this one. This was a friend of Sakamichi Brewing, Virginia Beer Company, which showed up quite a lot. We did a bit of a more detailed list last year, right, for Beers of the Year. And I think both of us had several Virginia Beer Company beers on. Pocket Squares was a barrel-aged imperial stout they did. Specifically, it had a couple adjuncts in it, but I remember pecans were in there. It was incredible. So much so that I broke my hard and fast rule of never taking more than 1 can home. I ended up taking 2 of those home, and I don't regret it. This isn't a confession. I'm just saying that's what I did.
Just speak loudly and clearly into the microphone, and the judge will be the judge of that. Lots of really good beer last year. What do you say we enjoy some more good beer with the beer that we're going to be drinking this week? What can you tell us about this one?
This is a very exciting beer from an up-and-coming new brewery.
On a scale of 1 to Gideon the 9th, how excited are you for this beer?
Gideon the 10th.
Ooh.
Yep, that's how excited I am.
What can you tell us about the brewery that made this beer?
It's relatively new brewery. It was founded by 2 extremely handsome and charming young men. I'm
listening.
They both have great hair.
Yep.
I believe they do a podcast, which literally tens of people listen to.
Well, let's not
every week.
Let's not go crazy.
10 people listen to every week. Right. That's enough of that. It's our beer.
Yes.
That we made here.
Finally.
In this brewery.
At last. We have finally, after many delays, been able to keg some of the beer that we brewed here in our space last December. And this is First Batch Pale Ale, so called because it is the first beer that we ever brewed on our system.
Just tell them what it is.
That's exactly what it is. No more beating around the bush. Let's dive into the beer. Malts, pale, Vienna, wheat, hops, equinot, and lotus. Those are the key vocabulary items. Dan, what do you think of this beer?
You had a plan,
Yes.
right, to make these 2 beers.
Well, I kind of just making it up as I went along.
Plan-ish. And the pale ale was the first thing that we brewed, the first thing that you put in the tank. And as I understand it, you wanted to keep it simple as possible with as few variables as possible.
Yes, correct.
So we didn't dry hop this at all. And I think the end result is it's a very malty pale ale. I wouldn't necessarily call it a British, like an English pale ale, but it's kind of in that territory, right? In my opinion.
Right.
I feel like you get a load of the malt character shines through in both the aroma and on the palate as well. I like it a lot. It has a ton of character, but I feel like it has a ton of character, and the character is dominated by the malt body of it.
Interesting. Just to peel back the kimono a little bit, when I was designing this recipe, because we had never used the system before, I kind of had to guess at how efficient the system would be. And by efficiency, we mean there is a certain amount of starch in the malt. How much of it will you be able to convert to sugar and extract from the grains to turn into fermentable sugar for the yeast to eat? And like a good brewing system, you get 85, maybe 90% of the possible starch and turn that into sugar and then into alcohol. And because this was our first time, I guessed probably about 75%.
Right.
Like give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. But it turns out that was actually way less efficiency than we got out of the system,
Right.
And it was closer to 85%,
Wow.
even from the first batch. And so this beer wasn't supposed to be as strong as it turned out. I used more malt than I thought I was going to, that I should have done, just because I thought I was going to need it
Right.
to hit that ABV. So actually, this one comes out to, I think, 6% ABV, which is quite high
Pretty
for a
big
pale
pale ale,
ale, isn't it? So I think that might be where the overly malty character, maybe overly is the wrong way of describing it, but the malty character, the strong malt character is coming through. The first thing I noticed about the beer, and I was very glad to see this, is it looks like beer. When you imagine a beer color, this is kind of how I picture a beer.
Right.
It's not too pale, it's not too dark. It's
Yeah.
a kind of nice amber golden color. And it has a clean white head on the top. And that was my biggest worry about what was going to come out of the tank. Is it going to look and smell
Right.
like beer
Right.
just straight off the bat? So seeing it pour out of the tap and it looks and smells like beer was quite a big relief.
Sure.
Just today. And what's more, it tastes like beer as well. You say that it does have a malty character, and I think that there is a certain amount of sweet maltiness in there, but I get a decent amount of hoppy bitterness from this as well. It is balanced. We used Equinaut and Lotus. Equinaut mostly for the bittering and a little bit of citrus flavor as well. And then Lotus apparently has a kind of orange creamsicle kind of flavor to it. You're picking up very much orange creamsicle from this.
I think you can find a bit of citrus in there.
Yeah, I think that the creamsicleness, which is definitely a word, would have probably been expressed more strongly if we had dry hopped it.
Yeah.
But as most of the hops went in on the hot side, you're getting more flavor, bitterness flavor rather than aroma.
Right.
There's less aroma than there would have been if
Right.
we dry hopped it. Somebody asked me the other day, dry hopping, so are hops usually wet? Which was a good question, right? I don't know why we call it dry hopping,
Right.
but just for anyone who isn't familiar with what that means, when we put hops in on the hot side, so when we're boiling them in the kettle to extract the bitterness and the flavor, we just call that hopping. But when we put hops in on the cold side, so after the beer has gone into the tank, into the fermenter and been cooled down to 20 or 15 or something, we call that dry hopping for some reason, even though the hops do get wet when they go in there. Why is it called dry hopping?
No idea, but now I'm curious to find out.
The hops are wet.
Sure. They're always going to get wet.
They get wet in there,
Just like the T-shirts in here.
just like the Sakamichi t-shirts. So, answers on a postcard, please. Why is it called dry hopping?
Also, how do I flip back and forth between far apart pages on my, once again, Kobo, what did I say? H2O Glow version 1.
I think the problem might be that you've actually picked up a bottle of water by mistake there.
No, it's waterproof. That's why
Right,
it's the
okay.
H2O
Right,
model.
I see.
H2O model. We've been testing this beer. That's a very important thing that people maybe don't realize. Very important to test the beer every day.
Yep.
And off flavors can be present from the start. They can develop later in like when it's in the tank. So you test it every day to kind of see if those are occurring and showing up. So it was. I wouldn't say that it was totally stress-free, but it was nice to come in and pour a little bit out of the tank and try it and go, like, nothing bad is happening here.
Right.
It doesn't, in the beginning, maybe it doesn't taste, not carbonated, and it doesn't taste exactly how it's going to finish up, but you should early on be able to tell, like, bad things are going on in the tank or not. So that was really nice to be able to take those samples over the time it was in the tank and go, yes, again today, this tastes fine. Nothing bad is going on in this beer that require us to like dump out the first batch.
Just to be clear, when we say testing the beer every day, we don't just mean pouring ourselves a big glass of it and drinking it.
We don't?
We also taste the beer. But it's also things like checking the gravity, checking the pH, checking the temperature, everything else like that. And then you also give it a little bit of a smell and a taste, just to make sure that the fermentation is proceeding as it should be. before we get too self-referential, maybe we should move on to the next segment and try to pair this beer. Every week when we drink one of the beers from the taps, we also like to pair it with one of 8 things. Although, of course, we can't have the 2 most recent choices, which were, of course...
they were drinking companion activity, but they weren't really that recent.
Okay.
I'm saying we could do whatever.
Let's roll the bones. Number 7, drinking companion.
Oh.
You were hoping for activity.
No. I wasn't, but yeah, I should have been, eh?
Who would you like to drink this beer with?
Drinking companion. I feel like under any other circumstance, this would be the cop-out answer. Because I would like to drink this beer with the brewer of this beer.
Well, I have good news for you.
This is exciting. This is the first beer that we made in our own space. And we've been, this place has been an apple in our eye longer than it has been a real place. And having the brewery in here has been a dream, since the beginning, before we even had the tap room. So I would like to sit down with you and drink the first beer that we made. And we're doing it, so I'm happy to be here having this beer with you.
Yeah, if you just reach behind you and grab that rubber ring, we can move on to the next segment. Get tubing.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, sorry. It's like, is this a sex thing? What's going on?
Now that you've chosen me, it would be mean-spirited in the extreme for me to not choose you. And that's why I'd like to drink this beer with Chris Poole of Shiokaze Brew Lab, who came in for the brew day. Thank you very much, Chris. Really appreciated you being here. And Chris and I used to work together at Baird's. We would frequently have some beers together, and it's been too long since we've been able to sit down and just have a few beers and have a chat. So, Chris, come on over again, and we can drink some of the beer that we made together. And who knows, maybe we'll let Dan join us as well.
He's a pretty busy man.
He is a busy man.
I probably spend more time drinking with Chris than you do recently.
That's true, yes.
And even when I do, he's kind of like, he's here and he's there and he's everywhere all at once. He's got a lot going on.
Chris, you need to take some time for yourself.
Yes.
Come over to Sakamichi and enjoy some of this beer that we made together. Good choices this week.
I would like to point out, I'm looking at the list now, for the last 4, like including this one, the last 4 podcasts have been all our beers. We did Tama Chocolate Orange Porter, then we did Dialectic, Sour Cherry, Morello Cherry, and then we did Three Amigos. And now we're here doing First Batch Pale Ale. So called because, again, it was the first batch.
Well, next week we're probably going to do the IPA that we made as well. So long may this streak continue.
Second batch
IPA. Speaking of extremely good beer, do we have anything coming up in the fridge this weekend that you think people ought to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. We have... There's a lot of good stuff in bottles and cans coming in. So I had to think about this, and I'm going to restrain myself to mentioning 3 things that are coming in.
So you said you were going to restrain yourself to only taking 3 bottles of each.
No promises. It depends on how good it is. I start with 1, and we see how we go. So the first one I want to mention is that we are getting 2 mix packs from Faction Brewing. Okay. Faction Brewing, it's their first time in Japan. They've never been been imported before. So I felt like let's just buy, I think it's 3 beers in each mix pack. So that's 6 different varieties from Faction Brewing, which means there's not a lot of each. And obviously I'm going to take my cut. So hurry in and get those. But that's cool, right? Like, this is a beer that if you haven't gone to the States, you have not been able to get your hands on over here. It's his first time in Japan.
So how many different beers are coming from them?
6 different beers coming in. It's 2 mixed packs, 3 different kinds in each, so 8 of each kind.
Okay, so there'll be 2 of each kind
remaining after I cull the herd.
That's exciting. I don't know what to expect, but I'm looking forward to it.
The other one, and probably near and dear to your heart, one of your favorite beers, as frequent listeners to the podcast will know, is Belching Beaver's Peanut Butter Stout.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask you because I don't want to go through the travesty that was me before saying, "Tell me your favorite book." You go through 11 things before we get to it. You love peanut butter milk stout, though.
That's true. PBMS.
PBMS, as we call it shorthand over here, because we got no time to waste. We've had a few different versions of that. We've had Viva la Beaver, which is the Mexican chocolate peanut butter milk stout.
We've got the nitro version in bottles right now.
We still have a few bottles of that left.
For
the
now.
Nitro version. For now, yeah. But there's a new version, which I don't think they have ever done before. It is a barrel-aged Imperial peanut butter milk stout. It's like 11.8%, something like that.
Was it aged in peanut butter barrels?
You know, I don't know. I certainly hope so. It's been aged in some kind of barrel. But that's coming in. That's a 500 ml bottle, and there's only 12 of those.
There's only 10 of those, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, 10 in the case. Anyway, I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm absolutely taking one of those home.
Yeah,
what are you going to do? This is a bit of a moral quandary for you. You love that beer. You don't like barrel-aged stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find out what kind of barrel it was and how barrel-aged it tastes. Because if you took a beer as great as that and just made it taste like something revolting like whiskey, what would be the point? Right? You've ruined a good beer at that point.
So how are you going to do this? You're going to
I'm going to wait till you finish both your bottles and then ask you how they were.
Okay. All right. I see. So that's coming in. And then also we have Firestone Walker's 26th anniversary beer coming in. That's also 12 bottles of that in a case. That's a really interesting one. We had the 25th anniversary in last year.
Yeah, that was amazing stuff.
I thought it would take a while to sell, and people snapped it up. So Firestone Walker's been around for a long time.
26 years.
They have, yeah, sure, right. I guess you can do the math yourself. They have, as any big brewery does, they have a lot of barrel aging going on. Some of the things are very old that they're keeping in barrels. And for their anniversary beer every year, they curate a blend from the barrels. So they start off and say we want, the base will be 50% of, this barley wine that's been barrel aging since 2016. And then we'll add 10% of this Imperial Stout. They kind of blend, mix up a blended beer of all of their barrel aged stuff. And when you buy it, it comes in a box with paper, almost like a scroll,
right.
With a letter from the brewmaster, and it tells you the blend that's in that year's anniversary beer. So that one is very, very cool. I think cool to drink, but I also kind of think it's cool just to hang on to, because the beers in it are already pretty old, and you can hang on to that for, I don't know, up to 10 years more before beer starts getting a little weird.
Yeah, that 36th anniversary one.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting beer last year. Didn't we share a bottle of it?
We didn't.
People?
No,
we didn't get to have it.
I mean, I didn't. Maybe you did.
Just cracked one open. Let's give this a go. I could be thinking of something else. But a really fascinating project that they've got. Beers stretching over that length of time. That they blend together so skillfully to make something new.
For an anniversary beer, it's a great concept.
Yeah, really great stuff. It would be nice to have the kind of space that would allow you to do that kind of thing, wouldn't it? Well, some exciting beers coming up this week. They should all be arriving on Friday. Dan doesn't get in here until Sunday, so if you're quick, you might be able to grab a few bottles for yourself before he hits the shelves. Look forward to hearing about all of those on our social media. We've been drinking one of our own beers today, the First Batch Pale Ale. We kegged the Big Ticket IPA today as well. Both of those will be hitting the taps on Saturday this weekend. Apparently it's going to be a really nice day on Saturday as well. 19 degrees.
Wow. Seriously?
So thank you, global warming, for that one. Should be a big day if you would like to try some of the beer that was brewed here in Tachikawa. First ever craft beer brewery in Tachikawa, I hear.
Yeah.
Then come on down. We will be very happy to see you there. Otherwise, please stay safe, enjoy your week, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone.